funny how one game can change the perception of everything, isn't it? I mean, for the longest time, we talked so much about how Pitt's strength was its offense. The offense is what was winning them the games. The defense was the weak spot. The pass rush was the weak spot. That was what was going to hold them back. The game that Pitt would ultimately lose, their first loss of the season would be a game where the offense struggled and the defense, just continued doing what it did or whatever, and they would struggle, and because the defense was the weakness of the team, and that's where they were really lacking. And it's funny, and then you have one game where the offense is not good, their worst game of the season, and the defense plays its best game of the season, only gives up 2 touchdowns and a field goal. And now I'm doing a video that says, is the arrow pointing up for Pitt's defense? Look, you know what? So I thought of it. I was like, hey, I should probably do one on the defense, do an episode on the defense, particularly because we didn't talk about the defense yesterday in our review of the Cal game. We just talked about Eli Holstein and Pitt's offense. And so we should do an episode on the defense. We should put some focus there. And so I was like, oh, yeah, it'll be like arrows pointing up on the defense. But then I started looking into it a little bit more, and I'm not so sure that the defense has been as suspect as we've made it out to be through the first 5 games. I think maybe the defense was a little bit better than we made it out to be through the first 5 games. I think it's improved. I think it certainly improved on Saturday, but I think that's part of an overall trend of this defense getting better and better. There are little things here and there that just are trending in the right direction, I think, for this defense. And maybe they weren't really all that bad all along. I think there's some different stats and things we can look at that maybe paint a different picture than what's been what we've sort of, the ways we've been talking about this team thus far. So I got the legal pad out. Some of these things here are relevant to today. Some of them are not. This, back of the page here is Pitt's offense, and their 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80-plus yard plays dating back to 2016, because this is what we do with our time. And down here, this is ACC Player of the Week this year. You see this category, this column right here? That's Pitt. 15 ACC Player of the Week honors so far this season, more than any other team in the conference by almost double. Syracuse and Miami are second. They have 8 each. And granted, 5 out of Pitt's 15 ACC Player of the Week honors were Eli Holstein getting Rookie of the Week, which his streak broke this week after the Cal game. He did not get ACC Rookie of the Week this week, which is disappointing. He had won it every week that he played. I forget who the actual ACC Rookie of the Week was this week. Oh, Isaac Brown, the running back from Louisville, who actually looks like he might be a problem. He went for 146 and 2 touchdowns on 20 carries. He's run for 508 yards so far this season, which is already the 3rd highest total by a true freshman in Louisville history. You don't care about Louisville's running back, but you will when Pitt plays at Louisville, because Isaac Brown looks like he's going to be pretty good. But Eli Holstein didn't get Rookie of the Week this week. But even if you take his 5 Rookie of the Weeks out of Pitt's count of 15, that still leaves them with 10 Player of the Week honors, which is more than any other team in the conference. More than Miami and Syracuse, like I said, who are second most with 8. This week, Ben Sauls was Specialist of the Week. Jimmy Scott was Defensive Lineman of the Week. Sauls has been Specialist of the Week one other time after the Cincinnati game. Holstein, in addition to all his Rookie of the Weeks, was also Quarterback of the Week for the West Virginia game. Desmond Reed has been Running Back of the Week only once, actually, the Cincinnati game. He's also been Receiver of the Week after the North Carolina game. Kyle Lewis has been Linebacker of the Week twice, the West Virginia game and the Carolina game. Kanate Mumfield has been Receiver of the Week once. Donovan McMillan has been Defensive Back of the Week once. And I think that about does it. And then you come up to this week's with Jimmy Scott and Ben Sauls. Scott with, the first time a Pitt player has had at least 3 sacks in a game since Kalijah Cansey near the end of the 2022 season. Ben Sauls currently 10 for 10, a perfect 10 for 10 this season. The second most field goals made for any kicker who's perfect this year. He's tied with 2 other guys who have all gone 10 for 10. And there's one guy, I forget where he's from, Kentucky, I think. He's 11 for 11. And so Ben Sauls legitimately one of the best kickers in the country. He's made 12 in a row dating back to last season. And, of course, capped it most recently with a 58-yard field goal. you tuned in today to hear about Pitt's defense, and we'll talk about that. But just one last stat on Ben Sauls. He has now made 4 field goals of 50-plus yards in his career. 3 of those 4 were this year. He's a perfect 3 of 3 from beyond 50. Prior to this, he was 1 of 5 from beyond 50, with the one make being a 51-yarder, I think, in 2022 against Duke. He should have had another one that year when he had that 54-yard, I think it was 54 against Virginia, the one that went off the uprights, had plenty of distance, just hit the upright, or else he would have now 5 50-yard field goals in his career. But as it is, he's only got 4. 3 of them are this year. Ben Sauls is on fire. He's one of the 5 best players on this team. He's money, and he proved it with a 58-yarder that had room to spare, and ultimately ended up being the game-winning score to beat Cal on Saturday. But we're talking defense today. That was the ACC Players of the Week. They announced that yesterday, so we had to make a little mention of it. But we're talking defense today. Is the arrow pointing in the right direction for Pitt's defense? Is Pitt's defense maybe not as bad as we thought it was? Even when it looked like maybe I shouldn't say as bad as we thought it was, because I don't know if anybody thought it was. Well, there were certainly Pitt fans who thought it was bad, because there are Pitt fans who think everything is bad. I think for a lot of us, we felt like there were some weaknesses on the defensive side, some vulnerabilities that could be taken advantage of and that were taken advantage of. But maybe that defense is a little better than we gave it credit for. And maybe the arrow is pointing up, but they've been kind of good all along, and they might just get better. Let's talk defense here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's an off week for Pitt, but it's not an off week for us. We'll have lots of Pitt conversation for you right here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Of course, we'll have no post-game show this week because there's no game, but we will have a live stream on Wednesday night, 8:30 to 9:30, as we always do. Me and Jim Hammett get together with you and talk a little Pitt sports with your comments and questions, and it happens right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, let's talk about Pitt's defense, all right? Because the Panthers currently, let's talk about some national ranks, all right? They are giving up an average of 23.5 points per game, which I gotta be honest, doesn't sound like that much to me. You'd like to get that number under 20, that'd be great. It's college football. 23.5 points per game doesn't sound like that much to me. When you have a good offense, which I'm going to say that I still think Pitt's offense is good despite Saturday's game. When you have a good offense, clearing 24 points shouldn't be that tall of a task, right? Too much of an ask there. And yet, 23.5 points per game allowed ranks number 67 nationally. So if I just showed you that they're giving up 23.5 points per game, you might be like, well, that's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. And then I say, well, they rank number 67 out of 132 teams. They're like dead center. You might be like, well, actually, they should be better than that. Passing yard or total yards per game, 353.2 yards per game. I don't know if you think that sounds good or bad, but it's number 64 nationally, which is not good. Rushing yards per game, 108.5. Doesn't sound like a ton. You'd like it to be under 100. They rank number 31 nationally. Better than some of those other numbers. Not that great, though. You know, you'd like Pitt's defense. You'd expect Pitt's defense to be in the top 25 or top 20 nationally in rushing yards allowed per game. Passing yards allowed per game, 244.7. That ranks number 101. Now, I don't think I looked at this team and said, boy, they've got major deficiencies when it comes to the passing game. Not like, the 2016 team or something like that. But they rank number 101 in passing yards allowed per game. That's a lot, right? So we have those 4 stats and those 4 rankings. 67, they rank 67 in points per game allowed, 64 in yards per game, 31 in rushing yards per game, 101 in passing yards per game. But there's another side to it. And I think when you look at those raw numbers, I think you have to understand there's a certain volume element to it. And because of that, I think you have to look at a few other stats in conjunction with those kind of volume stats, right? Average volume stats. Like, how about this? Pitt's defense has faced 441 opposing offensive plays. That's the 18th most in the country. They have faced 219 passing plays. That's the 26th most in the country. And I bring up these numbers because this is probably going to be a recurring theme with this team this year. The defense is going to be on the field a lot. And that's not about getting off the field on third down, although I think they're currently allowing third down conversions at like a 41% clip, which is not good. They need to get better at third down. I don't think there's any question about it. It's back and forth on their success rate on third down. They need to get better than that, though. They need to do better than they have so far. They need to get off the field. But when you have an offense like Pitt's that runs the tempo that they run, that has these short drives, I mean, how many touchdown drives have been 2 minutes or less, 2.5 minutes or less, sometimes 3 minutes, and those are the slow ones. They strike fast. They go fast. They play fast, score faster. It's Cade Bell's, mantra, and it's been a cliche, and I think we've all sort of, grudgingly accepted it, for a lot of reasons, not the least of which, bad memories of Todd Graham, but they have been playing that way. And a lot of what we've seen through the first 6 games, certainly the first 5, were play fast, score faster. And that's what they've been doing. And so that's great. You want to be able to score fast. You want to be able to strike. You want to be able to put pressure on the other team, but you're going to end up with your defense on the field more often. I don't think they've won time of possession in any game this season. I could go and look that up, but I'm pretty sure they haven't. Maybe the Youngstown State game or something. But that's okay. That's by design. They're not setting out trying to win time of possession. They're not setting out trying to hold on to the ball or anything like that. They're trying to go fast. And that's good. I think it's effective, and it's been effective. But flip side is you're going to put your defense on the field a lot, and they're going to face a lot of plays, which is the case. It's kind of like the run defense last year. Teams were so not afraid of Pitt's offense, and we've brought this point up a lot of times. The teams were not afraid of Pitt's offense, and because of that, they were content to run the ball a lot. I think, Pitt faced the most rushing attempts, or like one of the top 3 rushing attempts against of any year of the Pat Narduzzi era. Like, teams were running it more against Pitt last year than they have in just about any other year that since Narduzzi's been the coach. And so the end result is it looked like they gave up the most rushing yards of the Narduzzi era, which I think they did, or either the most or the second most. But the yards per carry, like you've heard me talk about it. I talked about this a bunch of times all offseason because it took a bunch of work to get the numbers down and figure it out exactly. And once I did, I was very pleased with myself. And I think it's in one of these legal pad pages, but the yards per carry ended up being one of the best of the Narduzzi era, like better than some of the defenses you think of as being really, really good. Like when you think about the really good defenses of the Narduzzi era, 2021 or 2019, those defenses that were just dominant and shut down the run. Well, last year's run defense was on par with those. And in some cases better than some of those in terms of yards per carry. And that's taking out sacks and all that, just rushing attempts, rushing yards. Last year's defense was good, but the numbers didn't look good. Their rush defense didn't look good because teams were running it so much. And so you have something similar happening this year where you've got the 18th most plays run against you, the 26th most passing plays run against you. Even though Pitt is 64th in yards per game allowed, they're 21st in the nation in yards per play allowed. All right? 64th in yards per game, 21st in yards per play. Rushing yards, they're 31st in the country in rushing yards per game allowed. They are 7th in the country in rushing yards per play, rushing yards per attempt. Passing yards per attempt, they're still like 66th, so not that great. They're still giving up like 7 yards per pass attempt. That's kind of, that might be where they generally hover, because that's what we know this Pitt offense or Pitt defense to be. It's what they've been over the years. There's sort of that feast or famine field that they either get a sack or give up a big pass play. Well, after getting 6 sacks against Cal on Saturday, Pitt is now tied for 15th in the nation with an even 3 sacks per game. So they're sort of, their pass defense, at least as the numbers stand right now, is kind of more or less in line with what it typically is. But some of those other numbers, the yards per game, the rushing yards per game, you look a little closer and see what they're doing per play. They're giving up less than 5 yards per play. I think there's only about 30 teams in the country allowing less than 5 yards per play. And Pitt at 4.8 yards per play right now ranks 21st in the country. But because they have the 18th most plays being run against them, the total yardage ends up with ranking 64th in yards per game allowed. So I think they're maybe a little bit better than we give them credit for there. Now, I think there's also, if we want to talk about the arrow for Pitt's defense and why it might be pointing up, I think there's also something to be said for the play of some individuals. And, the first name I think that comes to mind is Kyle Lewis. And I raved about Kyle Lewis all offseason. My track record with outside linebackers is not great, but I got this one right. Jim Hammett pointed out Kyle Lewis right now is the only power forward defender with 50-plus tackles, 8-plus tackles for loss, 3-plus sacks, and 2-plus interceptions. Lewis, an outstanding game. I thought he would have a chance at ACC Linebacker of the Week. He didn't get it because a guy from Syracuse had 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, an interception, and a fumble recovery. So you get those turnovers, and that's going to make that's gonna get everybody's attention. But Kyle Lewis, a huge game against Cal, 12 tackles, 6 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, a pass breakup. He's all over the field. He's exciting to watch. He's the kind of guy that announcers take notice of. I mean, when you watch the broadcasts of these Pitt games, they're always talking about Kyle Lewis. He's the biggest playmaker on the defense. He's playing like maybe the best outside linebacker of the Narduzzi era. At least through the first 6 games, he has been. And he's a reason to watch. You know what I mean? When you're watching Pitt on defense, there's a lot of things you can choose to look at. You can look at the pass rush. You can look at the coverage. Or you can just watch number 9. And chances are, if you watch number 9, if you watch the pass rush, right, and it ends up being a handoff, you might lose track of the play. If you just watch the coverage and it's a running play or something, you might lose track of the play. If you watch number 9, you're going to know what the play is and see where the play is because he's always there. He's always around the ball. And so it's maybe the best way to watch the whole game when Pitt's on defense is just to focus on Kyle Lewis because he's going to get around the ball. He's going to be there. I think Donovan McMillan's playing well. I think he's picked up more or less where he left off last year. Another double-digit tackles game on Saturday with 10 tackles. I want to say he's got double-digit tackles in 4 out of 6 games this season. It might even be 5 out of 6. I was just looking at this. Because Kyle Lewis had 12 tackles. He's got... I thought I had written it down. Either way, those guys. McMillan's got double-digit tackles in 4 out of the last 5 games. And Kyle Lewis has double-digit tackles in 3 games so far this season. So, I mean, both of those guys just making tons of plays. I think Donovan McMillan is doing a great job cleaning it up there. He doesn't have the, I think he has 1 interception this year. He doesn't have the turnovers, but that's not always going to be a turnover-friendly position. Playing that boundary safety where you're down in the box, you're just not going to have the opportunities that the free safety is going to have. Now, you'd like to see Javon McIntyre and P.J. O'Brien make a few more of those kinds of plays, but I think Donovan McMillan is doing a great job at his job. I think the addition, the re-entry, the re-addition of Sean Fitzsimmons is huge for this defense as well. I think the pass rush has looked very different the last 2 weeks, and I am willing to put a lot of that on Sean Fitzsimmons. I don't think Sean Fitzsimmons is the reason Jimmy Scott got 3 sacks against Cal. I think that was just great effort by Scott. But Sean Fitzsimmons is making a huge impact. He had 4 quarterback pressures at North Carolina, according to Pro Football Focus. He didn't record any pressures against Cal, but he ended up with 3 or 4 tackles, which is a good number for a defensive tackle. And, I mean, I think you could still see him impacting the play and impacting the line of scrimmage, impacting the offensive line, and impacting Cal's offense. Sean Fitzsimmons, I think, through his first 2 games back, has been every bit the player you hoped he would be. The only thing he doesn't have is a sack, and that's coming. I won't be surprised if he gets one on Kyle McCord next Thursday night when Pitt hosts Syracuse here at Acrisure Stadium. And so it's like Fitzsimmons is just I just think he's playing really well. You know, I thought I had something additional to say about it, but that's what it comes down to. And it's especially notable because we've talked all season about needing to get something out of the defensive tackles, about needing that position to produce more. And I think every game we've talked about it, the D tackles just not getting a push, not getting a push. Well, they're getting a push now. And they're getting a push with Sean Fitzsimmons. Meanwhile, some of the younger guys like Isaiah Neal and Francis Brew continue to grow and develop, and I think they're going to keep doing more and more as the season goes on, kind of like Sincere Edwards outside. But you got this breakout performance from Jimmy Scott with 3 sacks. Nate Matlack, according to Pro Football Focus, had 8 pressures against Cal. 8 pressures. Like, I don't even know if many other guys on the team, there's a couple, but many other guys on the team even have 8 pressures on the whole season. Nate Matlack had 8 against Cal. That game is going to come for him too, I think. I think that, I don't know about a 3-sack game, but a 2-sack game is coming for Nate Matlack. I don't know when, but I think it's going to happen. And so, you know, you're getting a little bit more pressure off the edge there. You've got a pass rush that comes from the linebackers because Kyle Lewis had, you know, a sack. Braylon Lovelace had 2. Rasheem Biles has got a bunch this season. You know, you're getting that pass rush from the linebackers. You're getting a little more push off the edge with Nate Matlack and Jimmy Scott. And you're getting this push up the middle with Sean Fitzsimmons. Like, all of a sudden, that defensive line is rounding into form a little bit. They're not going to go out and be great, and world beaters next week. But I suspect they'll be a little bit better than they were this week, which was a little bit better than they were last week, which was a little bit better than they were the week before. Even though Youngstown State was a weird game, you would have thought Pitt's defensive line would have more success and more impact on the game than they did, but they didn't. But they did have an impact on the Carolina game, and I think they had an impact on the Cal game. So that's I think a big time step in the right direction, an arrow pointing in the right direction. And then there's a lot of guys just playing well. I think Brandon George is having his best season. I think the corners, Rylan Gandy and Rashad Battle, his first year starters, have done a really nice job. Rasheem Biles, I think, has been one of the best players on this team. When he was out and he was hurt and he couldn't play against Cal, Braylon Lovelace comes in and has, 9 tackles, 8 tackles, 2 sacks, plays a big game, and so they've got guys on the defense. It's just going to be that continuing growth process, particularly up front, where I think they've taken steps forward, but they've got to take more. Got to keep getting more. All right, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. We've got our live stream tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then, of course, these Morning Pitt videos every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And as you can expect, the coverage doesn't stop at Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the place to get all of your Pitt video content. Well, I got that all mixed up. What am I talking about? Panther-Lair.com is the place to get all your Pitt coverage. Football, basketball, recruiting, the message boards to talk to other Pitt fans, and all of those things at Panther-Lair.com. Right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com is where you can get all the Pitt video coverage. So like this video, click the subscribe button, and you'll never miss any of it. All right, I'm going to go back and try and get this intro or ending of the video better for tomorrow. We'll try to get Wednesdays better than Tuesdays. That's always the goal, get 3% better every day, and we'll hope the 3% is right here at the end so we do this better. But in the meantime, have a great Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.